You step outside, you light something, you inhale. It feels modern. It feels like a habit born from stress and convenience and neon signs. But the real answer is far stranger. Humans were inhaling smoke on purpose long before there were cities, long before there was writing, long before anyone had a word for addiction. Your ancestors were doing this over 12,000 years ago. Not for relaxation, not for rebellion, for something closer to communication with the world around them. Let's go back. Picture a small group of people in what is now the Great Salt Lake Desert in Utah. No roads, no maps, just open land, firelight, and a lot of unknowns. In 2021, archaeologist Darren Duke and his team were excavating a site called the Wishbone Site. They found small charred seeds, hearths, and something unexpected buried in the ash. Tiny, wild tobacco seeds, burnt. They tested for nicotine residue. It was there. The site was dated to roughly 12,300 years old. That makes it the oldest known direct evidence of tobacco use anywhere on Earth. 12,000 years before agriculture, before pottery, before most of what you'd call civilization. Why would someone burn a plant just to breathe in its smoke? Here's where it gets stranger. Wild tobacco in that region isn't the mellow leaf you'd find in a modern cigarette. It's harsh, intensely bitter, in some cases dangerous in large doses. This wasn't a treat, this was medicine, ritual, or both. Smoke itself held meaning long before tobacco entered the picture. Fire was sacred. Fire meant safety from predators, warmth through freezing nights, and food that didn't rot your gut. Smoke was fire's visible breath, and for early humans, breath was linked to spirit, to life force, to the thing that left the body at death. So when someone inhaled smoke on purpose, they weren't just getting a chemical effect, they were pulling something symbolic into their lungs. Think about that for a second. The first smokers may not have been chasing a buzz. They may have been chasing a connection. Move forward a few thousand years into what's now Peru and Bolivia. Long before tobacco spread widely, people there were already engaging with another psychoactive plant, coca. Archaeologist Tom Dillahay's excavations at sites in the Andes uncovered chewed coca leaves and residue dating back roughly 8,000 years. Chewing isn't smoking. But it tells you something important. The impulse to alter perception, to reach for a plant and let it change how your body feels, is ancient. It shows up again and again, independently in different corners of the world. Humans didn't need a manual. They needed curiosity and a fire. By the time you get to Mesoamerica, tobacco use had transformed. Maya iconography from centuries later shows figures smoking rolled tobacco leaves in clearly ceremonial settings, tied to gods, to healing rituals, to communication with ancestors. Smoke rises. It drifts upward. To someone standing on the ground looking up, that must have looked like a message being sent somewhere unreachable by foot. You don't do that for boredom. You do that because you believe something is listening. Here's the twist most people don't expect. For most of human history, smoking wasn't a private habit. It was public, communal, and deeply tied to status and belief. Shared pipes moved through a circle, hand to hand, breath to breath. The act itself was the message. We are connected. We are speaking to something larger than ourselves. Compare that to now. You reach for a vape or a cigarette alone in a moment of stress, often trying to disconnect rather than connect. The plant hasn't changed all that much. The wiring in your brain hasn't changed all that much either. Nicotine still hooks into the same reward pathways it hooked into 12,000 years ago. What changed is the meaning. There's a deeper layer here too, one that has nothing to do with tobacco directly. Long before anyone burned a leaf on purpose, humans were already living with smoke every single day. Indoor fires, used for warmth and cooking, filled early shelters and cave dwellings with thick, lingering smoke. Paleopathologists studying ancient remains have found signs of chronic respiratory stress in populations that relied heavily on indoor fire use, a quiet, unintentional cost of staying warm and fed. In other words, your ancestors were breathing smoke long before they chose to. The choice came later. The exposure came first. That reframes the whole story, doesn't it? Smoking, at its origin, wasn't a vice invented by boredom or bad influence. It emerged from a species already deeply entangled with fire, already treating smoke as something powerful, mysterious, and worth inhaling on purpose. 12,000 years later, the ritual is mostly gone. The plant compounds remain. The neural pathways remain. What's missing is the shared circle, the belief that the smoke was going somewhere, the sense that this act meant something bigger than the moment itself. Maybe that's the real difference between then and now. Not the smoke, not the chemistry, the meaning. You step outside, you light something, you inhale. It feels modern, but somewhere in your nervous system, a 12,000-year-old habit is quietly running the show.